A new book explores the rich and fascinating history of African Americans in St. Louis. It's called Black St. Louis, and it's written by Calvin Riley and Nene Harris. And today, I'm joined by Calvin Riley to talk more about the book, this beautiful book, sitting right here. Congratulations.
Thank you.
The book's coming out this month, correct?
Yeah,
it's out.
It's out.
It's out now.
Yes.
And I love the cover. I feel like we could dedicate this entire interview to breaking down the cover, and we'll show a shot of that before that. But first, before we get started, how did this all come about for you to put together this book with Nene Harris?
Well, Nene Harris will bring tours to my museum, and she visits quite often. And she said I have a great story, and she said I should do a book. And it took her about 2 years to get me to agree to doing a book, because she said, well, I help you with it and all that. And I said, okay. And so we went on and we did it.
And you guys came together and put the book together. So how many, Black St. Louis, I mean, there's a lot of history there, and we're gonna all tie this to your museum in a second, but how many years does the book cover?
From about 1760 up to 2000.
So about 250 years. That's a lot.
Right.
And it's a lot. And what's interesting here is, I mean, when you open the book, you have a lot of images, and that's going to connect to the museum. When people saw your name key, it says underneath founder and director of the George B. Vashon Museum.
Right.
I know that because I've tried to interview you before, connected to the museum. Tell us about the museum so people know what it is, because it's very special and unique.
The museum is, George Vashon Museum, it contains a lot of St. Louis historians, and I use their artifacts to tell their stories, because a lot of people know St. Louis was segregated, and blacks lived in segregated communities. And so North St. Louis is rich. Right now, today, as I'm speaking, with their artifacts in basement and in attics. Because that's how I got the Vashon artifacts, because they were in a basement and trunks that had been in those trunks since 1880, when the Vashon family moved to St. Louis. And so it's take people like me in order to go in these homes and find these artifacts before they are thrown out in the trash. And so that's what I do, is when I do estate sales and I clean out homes, I'm searching for historical finds.
Yeah. So you've got collectibles there, you've got items, you were saying even with this cover that I was commenting on, that these are all photographs that you have on, or not all of them, but a lot. One is you, but many in your museum.
All of those are in my museum. Every last single one of them.
Really?
They're in my museum.
Are in your museum. And so so it's really interesting, because when you're putting the book together and writing the book with Nene Harris, you're really referencing primary sources that you have in your possession at the museum.
Yeah.
So what do you think? I mean, the book covers, it starts off with St. Louis's colonial history. I mean, 1764 goes into the 1800s, Civil War, gets into obviously slavery, Missouri as a slave state. It goes on and on and on. You said 250 years. Within all of that, what are some of the highlights that, while we have the interview today, that you would sort of, that pop up as sort of your, not favorite highlights, but you want to share with people that's covered in the book?
Well, the favorite for me is the Vashons. Because I was back in 2006, we was cleaning out their family home on West Bell, and we found their Vashon artifacts. At first, I didn't know what they were, and I kept seeing Vashon. So after some research, I found out that we, in fact, had cleaned out the Vashon family home. And the lady we had gotten it from is named Joan Gossam. She had gone into a retirement community, and she had her girlfriends to dispose the artifacts in the home. And so when I got the artifacts, me and my friend, Norm Paris, who was a reporter with the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, we went to the Missouri History Museum and showed them to Jacqueline Dace. Jacqueline Dace looked at the artifacts, and she said that was the greatest find ever to have an African-American family artifacts intact going back 250 years. It was rare. So my friend Norm Paris said, well, let me put this in the newspaper for you. And he did. And when it published in the Post-Dispatch, a few days later he called me and said people all over the country wanted to talk to me about the Vashon artifacts. It was the Overland University. It was the Smithsonian.
Wow.
And several other collectors and people like that. So the they flew to St. Louis and they were trying to buy the artifacts.
Yeah,
Now,
the artifacts.
Overland, they only wanted the artifacts of George Vashon, and I think that's what the Smithsonian wanted, but they was willing to buy it all.
Sure.
And I actually had made a deal with them. I was going to sell the artifacts. Then someone from the Mound City Bar called me and actually said they had heard I was going to sell the Vashon artifacts, and I said yes. And they said, well, we think you should keep them in St. Louis because the Vashon family had done so much here.
Yes.
And so one of my staff members said to me, she said, why don't you open a museum? I had never thought about a museum. I had no museum experience. So one day I was on St. Louis Avenue, and my wife looked at the building and she said, well, that would make a nice museum. And I said, what?
Yeah.
And she pointed to
We're
a
looking at it
building.
now.
Yeah, so
on the screen. So I mean, so let's. Do you want to make sure people know? So outside of the book, which can be purchased right now, you can come to the museum. You go on your website. You make an appointment, or
yeah,
or come on your open hours.
Yeah, doing 10 to 4 Wednesday through Saturday.
Got it.
Yeah.
And then you can see. I mean, you're clearly just years and years of collections that you have there. I want to, when we have the graphics, some of the highlights I think in the book that you cover Annie Malone, John Berry Meacham.
And that's kind of interesting you say Annie Malone, because when Annie Malone came to St. Louis, she was in Mill Creek at 2223 on Market Street.
Yeah.
And I'm at 2223 St. Louis Avenue. We had the same number. I thought that was kind of ironic.
That is really interesting.
Right, that we had the same numbers, yeah.
And when we were talking off camera about Mill Creek, you were saying you have a lot of sort of artifacts or some from homes.
I have Archer Blaine artifacts. Archer Blaine was the alderman in Mill Creek when they was making a decision to remove it. And so he believed them that they was going to give a better community for the African Americans. He had no idea they was talking about housing projects. And so anyway, so he went along with it. But I have his artifacts, he and his wife artifacts, yes.
Artifact. No, that's great. And when we were looking at Annie Malone too, people will know that she was the St. Louis the first black millionaire, right?
She was. And matter of fact, according to some of the nurses, she had a lot of power here. She had gone over to Barnes Hospital and asked Barnes why the black people had to be in the basement. They had them in the basement. And so they were moved to the first floor. So when Aaron Malone was divorcing her, they got behind and helped him, and that's why she moved to Chicago. And she could only come back to St. Louis on Saturdays and Sundays. And she had to be gone by Monday morning. If she wasn't, she would be arrested for trespassing. And that's crazy. But she had so much power, they don't want to hear, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that she knew that. And I hope I was correct in, she was a millionaire, right?
Yeah, because across the country, people always say that it was Madam C.J. Walker.
Yeah.
But it was Annie Malone. Madam Walker did become a millionaire.
Yeah.
But she was Annie Malone's student.
Yes.
And so, you know, so some things happened where, you know,
there's so much. I mean, you cover. I mean, gosh, Sumner High School, which has such a rich history.
Right.
You have Moses Dixon in here, Thomas Milton Turpin. We didn't even get in time to go into Rosebud Cafe, Scott Joplin. All of this is in the book.
Right.
I need another like 30 minutes with you to get in there. If there's anything that I guess the best way to say with your book, to summarize to people, I feel sometimes with Black history, we don't always give credit, you know, where credit is due. We don't always give the same messaging and honor and shine a light. If you had to summarize really the sort of what this book is about, what would you say in your own words?
It's about unknown history makers, because they, I mean, you know, for instance, like State Senator J.B. Jet Banks. I have his collection in the museum, and he did remarkable things here in St. Louis. He was a great politician, and he was the one that made Martin Luther King Jr. a state holiday in Missouri before it became a national holiday. He also saved Harris Stowe. They was having a financial problem, because when I was about to graduate, they were talking about merging Harris Stowe with UMSL, and Jet Banks kind of got in there and stopped that, you know what I mean, and saved it. So he did remarkable things like that. He should be known. Dr. Lincoln Dogood, another one of my college professors. He came to St. Louis in 1940 because he had a brother here who was a judge.
Yes.
And the Monsanto company wanted to hire him and as a chemist, but he had to pass for white, and he could not tell nobody he was black, and he could not hire anybody black. And Dr. Duguid said he chose not to do that, and over his own lab over on Jefferson.
Oh, that's so interesting. Well, your memory is so rich, your knowledge. I'm
right.
glad that in writing we have something,
Right.
and then also with your museum,
Right.
that people can go to see in firsthand
Right.
what you're sharing with us
Right.
today, and so much more. I want to thank you for being here. Thank you.
Thank
I want to put up on the screen for you how to get this book, because we're looking at it, and I'm going to take it here off this set here. How many pages are we looking at? This beautiful book, about 150 pages, 152 pages of African-American history in St. Louis. Calvin Riley and Nene Harris putting years of work into this, and a lot of the collections that are at Calvin's museum are referenced and connected to this book. I encourage you to check it out. It's Black St. Louis. It's available now through Reedy Press. The website's right there. You can also visit the George B. Vashon Museum of African American History. It's not that far from Crown Candy
Right.
Kitchen, but the website for that to get the opening hours is georgevashonmuseum.org. And I wish I had more time with you. We'll have to have you back in studio just to kind of get into some of the nitty gritty when we get into the different eras. But I so appreciate you being here, and congratulations.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
All right, well, we've got a graphic for you to follow us on STLTV on all your social media platforms. That's Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, am I covering them all? And X, formerly known as Twitter. You can also learn more at stltv.net. And as always, thank you for joining us here at STLTV Experience St. Louis. We'll see you.